You sat down at the anniversary table, believing this would be a family memory worth keeping. But instead of kind wishes, your sister dropped a blunt remark that shattered every illusion. Your father simply sipped his wine, your mother sat frozen as if nothing had been said, and the neighbor's eyes pierced straight through you. Not a single person stood on your side. Every sacrifice you had made over the years, from saving the house to covering every bill, vanished in an instant, as if it never existed. In that silence, you realized you had stepped into a different story. One of fractures, consequences, and hard truths. If this feels like an experience that deserves to be heard, gently like and subscribe to stay with us for what comes next. You thought the silence at that table was the worst part. But the truth is, it was only the surface of something deeper, something you had lived with for years without even noticing. Long before that night, you had already been carrying a weight no one cared to see. There was a time when you had your own life, your own space, your own dream. You owned a flower shop in downtown Austin, a place that smelled of fresh lilies and roses every morning. Brides came in glowing with excitement, clutching magazines and pointing to bouquets they hoped would make their day perfect. You worked late into the night, pricking your fingers on thorns, arranging petals until they felt alive in your hands. The shop wasn't glamorous, but it was yours. Every ribbon, every vase, every sale, it was a piece of you. Then came the call from your father. His voice was heavy, carrying news you didn't expect. The house you grew up in, the very walls that had watched you take your first steps, was drowning in debt. Medical bills, repairs, taxes. Your parents were on the verge of losing it all. You didn't hesitate. Without a second thought, you sold your flower shop, the dream you had spent years building. $150,000. Enough to clear their debts, fix the roof, and buy them time. You told yourself it was temporary. You told yourself you'd stay in your old bedroom only until things settled. But days became months, and months became years. 5 years. 5 years of paying nearly $2,000 a month, electricity, water, property taxes, even the internet bill, so your sister could keep working. And yet, what did you receive in return? A father who nodded politely, never once asking how you were holding up. A mother who leaned into your hugs but never wondered how much you had given up. And a sister who once admired you, who used to follow you around the backyard under the stars, whispering about dreams, now treating you like an unwanted shadow. Rebecca, the girl who once called you her role model, looked at you with disdain the moment you walked into the kitchen. She rolled her eyes when you set down a coffee mug. She muttered under her breath about how much space you took up. Sometimes she drowned out your voice with blaring music. Other times she left little notes that felt more like insults than reminders. You brushed it off. You told yourself she was stressed, that her boutique job barely paid the bills, that her endless freelance projects kept her restless. But the remarks piled up. You don't even belong here. You're just in the way. Every word cut deeper, even though you never let the tears fall where anyone could see them. You began to adapt. Waking before dawn to avoid crossing paths in the hallway. Walking around town late for hours just to give the family more space. Eating your dinner alone in your room, scrolling through old photos of your flower shop, missing the smell of fresh lilies more than you could bear. You turned into a ghost inside your own childhood home, paying for the lights, but never basking in their glow. Your parents. They never asked. Your father spent his days tinkering in the garage, fixing lawnmowers for neighbors, chasing odd jobs like a man who had given up on more. Your mother busied herself with her gardening club, talking about rose bushes with Diane next door. They leaned on your money, but never once leaned in to see your exhaustion. And Rebecca, your sister, grew sharper with every passing month. The girl who once begged to help you arrange flowers, now accused you of mooching off the very house you kept afloat. She snapped, she sneered, she spoke loudly enough so your mother could hear her poison. And your mother never corrected her. Not once. That's when it hit you. You weren't living in a family anymore. You were living in a system where your role was clear: pay the bills, stay silent, disappear into the background. And they were fine with it. Until that night, when your sister finally voiced what they all silently agreed upon. That they would be better off without you. Imagine that 5 years of sacrifice, erased with a single sentence. And the worst part? Not a single person spoke up for you. Not your father. Not your mother. Not even the neighbors who had seen you run that household like a lifeline. And in that silence, you finally saw it. You had been invisible all along. The weight of those years presses differently when you allow yourself to look back. The flower shop wasn't just a business, it was your independence, your pride, your freedom. You gave it away without a second thought, thinking family would honor your sacrifice. Instead, they built a comfort on top of your silence. And when the silence broke, you were the one cast out. Now, sitting in the quiet after the storm, you begin to realize something else. This isn't just about betrayal. It's about patterns. Patterns of neglect. Patterns of ingratitude. Patterns you had allowed to continue because you thought love was reason enough. But love without respect is nothing but a hollow word. That's the truth you began to face. And maybe this story resonates with you. Maybe you've carried a weight no one thanked you for. Maybe you've poured yourself into family only to be told you were the burden. If so, take this moment for yourself. Take a breath and remember you're not alone in feeling unseen. If you believe these stories matter, gently tap that like button and subscribe so you can walk with us through the twists and turns still to come. Not because I ask, but because somewhere inside, you know your voice deserves to be heard. You thought the weight of sacrifice was heavy, but nothing compared to the weight of betrayal, the moment when silence finally gave birth to words that could not be taken back. The evening of your parents' anniversary was supposed to be simple. A celebration of 40 years together. Neighbors filled the dining room with chatter. Glasses clinked, laughter rippled through the air, and you placed the cake you had spent hours perfecting at the center of the table. Rose petals swirled across the frosting, delicate and soft, a tribute to the shop you had once owned, a quiet reminder of what you had given up. For a moment, you almost believed in the illusion. That maybe tonight would be different. That maybe your efforts would be noticed, if only through a glance, a smile, a kind word. But illusions don't last. Your sister leaned back in her chair, her voice cutting through the laughter like glass against stone. "We want to live without you," close quote, she said. No hesitation, no shame. Just the blunt dismissal of someone who had already decided your place was nowhere. The room froze. Your father lifted his glass, sipped his wine as though nothing had been said. Your mother's fork hovered midair, suspended in silence. And the neighbors, Diane from next door, Robert and Ellen from across the street, sat stiffly, their eyes darting from you to her, unsure of where to look. You felt your face burn, but you didn't argue. You didn't plead. You didn't even defend yourself. Instead, you smiled calm, deliberate, and took a sip of your own glass. The bitterness on your tongue matched the sting in your chest. Not a single voice rose for you. Not your parents. Not your neighbors. No one. That was when you stood. Your steps were measured, your movements quiet. You excused yourself without a word, without a tear, without the outburst they may have expected. You walked away, past the cake that no one touched, past the wine that still shimmered in glasses. Upstairs, you packed a single suitcase. Clothes, a few photographs, your laptop. Nothing more. No souvenirs of the life you had funded, no keepsakes of the people who had used your sacrifices as their comfort. You slipped out the back door into the cool Texas night, the hum of cicadas your only company. Your phone stayed silent. No one followed. At the motel 10 miles away, you lay on scratchy sheets staring at the ceiling. Messages buzzed on your phone, your mother, your sister, but you didn't open them. You knew what they would say. Apologies laced with excuses. Or worse, no apologies at all. And there, in that small dim room, you faced the truth. You had given up everything to keep the world alive. And in return, you had been erased. But the story doesn't end with betrayal. Betrayal is only the trigger. The choice comes after, whether you let it destroy you, or whether you use it to rewrite everything. The next morning, you stared at your laptop, scrolling through the list of payments you had carried for years. Electricity, water, internet, insurance, subscriptions. Each line a reminder of how you had been the silent provider. And each line, you realized, could vanish with a single click. It was then you understood. Betrayal had freed you. No longer bound by gratitude that never came, no longer shackled by respect that was never returned. You saw the betrayal for what it was, not the end of your worth, but the end of their hold on you. Still, memory has a way of playing tricks. As you pack your things at the motel, you remember the nights under the stars with your sister when she was still just a child. Her laughter, her admiration, the way she used to call you her hero. Those echoes made the betrayal sting sharper because it revealed the distance between who she had been and who she had become. And yet, in the silence of that room, you realized something else. She hadn't changed alone. She had changed because she could. Because your parents allowed it. Because you allowed it. That night at the table was only the breaking point. The betrayal had been building for years, in rolled eyes, in muttered words, in silence that spoke louder than accusations. The anniversary was simply the moment the mask slipped completely. You could have stayed. You could have returned home, swallowed the insult, and continued to pay. But betrayal has a way of clarifying what sacrifice never can. It shows you the truth that love without respect is hollow, and family without gratitude is nothing but a cage. So you left. Not in rage, not in sorrow, but in clarity. And clarity, though cold, is liberating. Perhaps as you listen, you recognize something of your own story in this. Maybe you've been the silent provider, the overlooked sibling, the invisible anchor. Maybe you've poured your life into a family that never once said thank you. If so, this is not just my voice, it's yours too. Take a quiet moment, breathe, and if these words echo inside you, gently click like and subscribe, not for me, but for yourself. Because stories like this deserve to be told, and voices like yours deserve to be heard. The motel walls felt thin, the hum of the air conditioner filling the silence. You stared at your laptop, the glow of the screen casting pale light across your face. Rows of automatic payments scrolled past. Electricity, water, internet, insurance, repair. No greeting. No apology. Only orders, as if you were still the manager of her life. You leaned back in your chair, steadying your tone. You said you wanted to live without me, close quote, you told her. Well, this is what that looks like. She didn't pause. You're overreacting. Just flip it back on and stop being dramatic. It wasn't surprise you felt, it was confirmation. She had always known how to twist things, how to make you feel like the problem. In the background, you heard your mother's anxious voice, rambling about the fridge losing power. It's not my job to keep your life running, close quote, you said flatly. You're 30 years old. Figure it out. There was silence, then a bitter laugh. You're so sensitive. No one wants you around. This is exactly why. Then the line went dead. You set the phone down, your chest burning, but your hands steady. Later that day, your mother called. Her voice was soft, trembling, almost pleading. Sweetheart, please. The house is falling apart. Rebecca can't work. Your dad can't get more requests without Wi-Fi. Can't you just turn it all back on? We're family. You closed your eyes, picturing her sitting in the living room with her gardening books, wringing her hands the way she always did when anxious. But the words from that dinner still echoed in your ears. Rebecca said you'd all be better off without me, close quote, you reminded her. You didn't disagree. I'm giving you exactly what you wanted. There was silence. Then a whisper. She didn't mean it. Please come home. But you didn't. Not this time. You remembered the years of tiptoeing through hallways, eating alone, paying bills that drained your savings. You remember the rolled eyes, the muttered words, the moments when gratitude could have been spoken but never was. You had given everything, and in return, you had been erased. So you drew your line. I'm not coming back, close quote, you said. Not until Rebecca takes responsibility for what she said. You all sat there. You're all responsible. You ended the call before she could argue. The days that followed revealed the cracks in the world. Rebecca called again, her anger sharper now. You think this is funny? The neighbors are starting to notice. Diane came by, pretending to care, but I know she's just being nosy. You're embarrassing us. The irony almost made you laugh. Embarrassing them after everything. You embarrassed yourself, close quote, you replied coldly. You wanted me gone. Now I'm gone. Handle your own bills. She exploded then, calling you selfish, accusing you of jealousy, painting herself as the victim. You ended the call and blocked her number. Voicemails from your mother grew more frantic. We got a notice from the bank. Please call me. Her words were thin, strained, carrying the weight of bills piling up without your money to cover them. You didn't call back. You couldn't. To respond would be to step back into the cycle, to patch up a life they had built on your silence. Weeks passed. Without your transfers, the house began to unravel. The lawn grew wild, the mailbox overflowed, the whispers in the neighborhood grew louder. Your sister lost a major freelance contract because she couldn't deliver work without internet. She picked up a night shift at a supermarket, stocking shelves under fluorescent lights. Pride bruised, image shattered. And your parents? They tried to cope. Your father tinkered in the garage, but with no Wi-Fi, his small repair jobs dwindled. Your mother leaned on neighbors for help, her usual cheer replaced by quiet desperation. One evening, she showed up unannounced to the home of the friends who had taken you in. Her face was drawn, her shoulders slumped, her purse clutched tightly. She sat across from you, her voice low but urgent. The bank's threatening to foreclose. Rebecca's working nights, but it's not enough. We're falling apart. You listened, but you didn't flinch. I paid for that house for years, close quote, you told her. Bills, repairs, everything. Rebecca said I wasn't needed. And you let her. Her eyes widened, her hands twisting the strap of her purse. She's your sister, close quote, she whispered. She's trying. Can't you help, just until we're back on our feet? Close quote. But you had already helped. More than enough. I'm done carrying her mistakes, close quote, you said. Her face crumpled, but she didn't argue. She stood, her words faint as she left. I thought family meant more to you. The door closed, and for the first time in years, you didn't feel the weight of guilt pressing in. You felt the clarity of distance, the strength of letting go. Months later, the inevitable came. The house was sold. Your parents and sister moved into a cramped apartment on the edge of the city. The neighborhood they once called home now watched from a distance, whispering about how quickly things had fallen apart. But you You had already stepped out of their shadow. The betrayal had forced your hand. The cuts you made cold, deliberate, became the revenge they never saw coming. Not out of spite, but out of necessity. Because sometimes, the greatest act of revenge isn't fire or fury, it's absence. It's letting them live in the silence they created, without the one person who kept the walls from collapsing. And in that silence, you finally heard something new. Your own voice. When the house was finally sold, it felt like the closing of a chapter you had already stopped reading. The photo of the for sale sign landed in your messages through a neighbor, the chipped paint and overgrown lawn standing as proof that the place you had kept alive for so long was now only another property on the market. 3 months without your hand had turned it from a family home into a crumbling shell. They moved into a small rental on the edge of the city, a one-bedroom apartment, cramped and dim, far from the neighborhood they once bragged about belonging to. No more manicured lawns, no more quiet prestige of the old block. Now it was peeling walls, paper-thin partitions, and the kind of silence that carries shame instead of comfort. The whispers in the neighborhood spread quickly. Diane, the one who used to gossip over roses in the garden, told anyone who would listen how the Collins family had fallen on hard times. Robert and Ellen, the couple across the street, repeated the story at every block party. How quickly the decline came once you were gone. And Rebecca, the sister who had spoken so coldly at that dinner table, now carried herself differently. Her freelance projects were gone, her boutique job a memory. She stocked shelves under fluorescent lights during the night, head down, her designer dreams buried beneath exhaustion. Neighbors who once envied her confidence now watched with thinly veiled pity. Each time she walked down the hall of a new building, she felt the weight of stairs she could not escape. Your father avoided the humiliation by retreating further into silence. He tinkered with broken machines when he could find them, but with no steady flow of work, his days became long stretches of idleness. Your mother, once a cheerful presence of gardening clubs and social visits, shrank into herself, too embarrassed to show her face where she used to flourish. None of this surprised you. It was the natural consequence of years leaning on a foundation you had built. When the foundation was removed, the collapse was inevitable. Meanwhile, your own life began to take shape again. With what savings you still had, you bought a modest condo in South Austin. It wasn't grand, but it was yours. The first morning you woke there, the quiet was different. Not heavy like it had been in your old bedroom, not suffocating like the motel's dim silence. This quiet was clean, open. It belonged to you. The walls were bare at first, but slowly you filled them with sketches of flowers, roses, lilies, peonies, drawings that reminded you of a shop you had once poured your soul into. You weren't rebuilding the old dream exactly, but you were reclaiming its essence. A local florist hired you as a consultant. You designed wedding arrangements, taught workshops on bouquet styling, reminded yourself what it felt like to create beauty without it being drained by obligation. Each paycheck went into your own account. Not to cover a roof that wasn't yours, not to keep someone else's lights on. For the first time in years, your money belonged only to you. You began to sleep without the restless churn of unspoken resentment. You woke to sunlight instead of guilt. Slowly, you felt yourself return, not the ghost who had haunted hallways, but the person who had once believed in her own worth. Then came the letter. The handwriting was unmistakable, Rebecca's, neat and deliberate, the same way she had written little notes to you as a child. You stared at the envelope for a long time before opening it. Inside, the words were softer than you expected. I'm sorry for what I said. I was stressed, angry. That's no excuse. I didn't realize how much you did for us. I hope we can talk. There was no mention of your parents. No promise to repair what had been broken. Just an apology that arrived too late, too small, carried on paper instead of action. You folded the letter and placed it in a drawer with old photographs you hadn't looked at in months. You didn't reply. You had already given her what she wanted. A life without you. And you weren't going to step back into a role you had worked so hard to leave behind. Because the truth had already revealed itself. Family, you learned, isn't defined by blood alone. It is respect. It is gratitude. It is the willingness to see another's sacrifices, to acknowledge them, to honor them. Without those things, family becomes nothing more than a word. Your father's silence. Your mother's pleas. Your sister's cruelty. Each had shown you who they were when the mask slipped. And you had finally seen yourself clearly too, not as the burden, but as the foundation they had chosen to discard. So you blocked their numbers. Deleted their voicemails. Allowed the distance to grow. And in that distance, you found something stronger than their approval. Your own self-reliance. It wasn't triumph that filled you. Not even anger. It was steadiness. A quiet strength, colder than fire but sharper than any blade. The kind of strength that comes when you realize you no longer need the things that once held you hostage. You began to attend garden parties hosted by your friends, Thomas and Laura, who had taken you in during the transition. Their kindness was constant, but you didn't lean on it the way you once leaned on your family. You had learned not to place your weight entirely on anyone else's shoulders. Looking back, the lesson carved itself into every step you took away from that house. Sacrifice without recognition is surrender, and surrender without dignity is nothing but slow erasure. You had been erased once. You would never allow it again. In the end, the revenge was not in their collapse, though collapse came quickly. It was not in the whispers that followed them, though whispers grew loud. It was in the simple fact that you walked away. That you refused to return. That you claimed a life where you were no longer invisible. And as you sit now, in the quiet of your own home, surrounded by sketches of flowers and the faint scent of blooms that belong to no one but you, the truth is clear. You are no longer the burden they cast aside. You are the proof that survival is not always about saving others. Sometimes, survival is about finally saving yourself. In the stillness of your own home, you finally saw the truth. What they called strength in themselves was only the reflection of what you had carried all along. Once you stepped away, the cracks spread fast, and the life they built on your silence dissolved. Yet the real victory was not in their downfall, it was in your choice to rise. You had walked through years of sacrifice unacknowledged, years of being the quiet support no one valued. But in leaving, you reclaimed something greater than any inheritance or apology. You reclaimed your dignity. That is the essence of this story, not bitterness, not spite, but clarity. You gave them the life they wanted, one without you. And in that distance, you discovered a life where your worth no longer depended on their recognition. If you've ever felt unseen in your own family, let this be your reminder that stepping away is not weakness, it can be the strongest choice of all. And if this journey speaks to you, consider gently liking this video and subscribing, not out of obligation, but because the stories remind us we are never truly alone in a silence. Please remind us we are never truly alone in a silence. Please remind us we are never truly alone in a silence. Please remind us we are never truly alone in a silence. Please remind us we are never truly alone in a silence. Please remind us we are never truly alone in a silence. Please remind us we are never truly alone in a silence. Please remind us we are never truly alone in a silence. Please remind us we are never truly alone in a silence. Please remind us we are never truly alone in a silence. Please remind us we are never truly alone in a silence. Please remind us we are never truly alone in a silence. Please remind us we are never truly alone in a silence.